And we're back for part 2 of the console wars. Gentlemen, how you been?
Oh, I've been great.
Oh my
Great.
You guys look so different from last week.
I just wear this shirt every Wednesday.
Oh my
I mean, it's a
God.
little washed out. I bleached it like 3 times since then, but it still holds up.
So, did you play any games while we were away?
No.
No. Not at all. Anyway, we are starting part 2 of the console wars, so enjoy. We're going back now. There were 3 full-on competitors.
Yeah.
Microsoft reared its ugly head.
Yeah, people thought it couldn't be done. Like, the video games, all the console wars was one-on-one, typically. Like,
Yeah,
there was one-on-one and then, like, a bit player, right?
Yeah, like the Jaguar in the 64-bit era, which was also 64-bit. And you're speaking about terribly designed controllers. That was a controller that had a terribly designed controller on top, and then a number pad
Yes.
bolted to the bottom.
Numeric key. For some reason, just like the ColecoVision had that. But you want to go back in further, like, the Grafx, that was kind of like the third party of the 16-bit era.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you know anyone with a Grafx? I knew one. My cousin had one, but that's the only person I know.
And he had one game, right?
Yep.
My brother had the portable TurboGrafx 16.
Oh, that was cool.
That he like borrowed from someone once, and I played Keith Courage for about 5 minutes. And I was like, it's cool to play a color handheld portable. Then the battery died.
Dude, you know, I realized that's kind of the Switch. And the Switch is the Turbo Express. The Turbo Express was a full-fledged TurboGrafx in your hand. It was really cool. It was very expensive and drained batteries like crazy, and no one had it. But it was a cool idea.
Yeah, it was amazing. You could play a console game
And you could plug it into your TV.
on the go, yes.
Well, now I got to go back because in the previous war, remember Sega dropped the Game Gear right on top of Game Boy.
Yeah.
And that thing was fun.
For the
cool.
30 seconds
And
you could
huge.
play before the battery died, but yes.
Yeah, it wasn't designed very well, but for those 30 seconds that you were playing, it was a lot of fun.
There was also a TV tuner, if I remember correctly, that was released for the Game Gear. So you can pop it in the cartridge slot, it had an antenna,
Yep.
you could watch TV on
And I
it
remember
for 30
that
seconds.
sold a lot of parents on it. The parents
Yeah.
like, oh, it's a television too. Great. But digressing from that, yeah, Microsoft coming into the console wars was crazy at the time because they make Windows. They make software. They're not a hardware company. They made like a mouse and a keyboard. Like that was the extent of their hardware at that point.
Yeah, and they dropped a bomb. And the weird thing was, I don't feel like they had a segment to go into because Sony was already doing what Microsoft was about to do just fine. But I think what Microsoft had was power, and suddenly it dropped the behemoth that is Halo and took GoldenEye off the map as far as the party shooter. I remember being in school and going to LAN parties at the time where you could hook up 4 Xboxes and put 16 frickin' people playing against each other
You
in
had
the
a very
same
special
room.
school. That's cool.
Yeah, we were always wondering who are all these people playing Halo LAN, but now we know.
Yeah.
My God, I mean, we went around. There was garage sale weekends where we would go and we had to look for TVs that we could plug more Xboxes into so that we could have people having their own screens
nice.
in the same room. I mean, it was a blast, and I think that was the differentiator. It had to be Halo. Halo was the thing that I think they launched their gaming division
Halo
on.
was their killer app back when that was a thing. That's not really a thing anymore. But that having a hard drive, they were the first system to launch with a hard drive, and they had an online service. Xbox Live was the first, really, the original, and arguably still the best. Depends.
Although I do have a quick digression.
Sure.
Sega Genesis had an online system
That's
too.
right.
Sega, I think it was called Sega Network. Or
The Sega
Net.
Channel.
The Sega Channel. Thank you very much, Terry.
That wasn't for playing against people, though, was it?
You could play against people in certain games.
Okay.
There was also DLC for certain games. Like Comic Zone was the famous one where you used the Sega Channel and you got like extra stages or something, or an extra stage maybe. But if you had the cartridge and you had the Sega Channel, which used your home telephone line to dial in directly to
It was way ahead
Sega
of its
servers.
time.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Like, no one at that time had, like, multiple lines in their house. Like, so it would take up, your telephone. You couldn't use it anymore.
Yeah.
And that was before AOL.
Exactly.
So it was like, who's using this?
Yeah, so Sega had that with Genesis, and it was moderately successful.
And that it functioned.
Yeah, and that it functioned. Not that many people bought it. But I knew someone who had it, and they were like the talk of my elementary school. That's all we could talk
You have
about.
the Sega channel? Oh, dude, what's on it tonight?
No, would you have more than one phone line? You're a god to us.
Oh, God,
my god.
yeah.
And then the Sega Dreamcast, when that came out, had online capability and came with a dial-up modem. You could buy an Ethernet adapter
Yeah.
to have an Ethernet modem. that had games you could play online, but no online service.
What I'm saying is where Xbox differentiated, Xbox Live was all about, it had an ecosystem, right? So like you could see your friends logging on, like Dreamcast didn't have that. Dreamcast didn't have like this overarching operating
it was on a per game basis,
Yeah, so with the Xbox, once you were plugged in Xbox Live, you were on it, and people could see what game you were playing, and you had a profile, like that was new. And it was thanks to the hard drive, and it was thanks to Microsoft's networking know-how. Really, though, Microsoft lost a ton of money on the first Xbox.
Really?
They just dumped millions of dollars into the R&D, and they were like, we don't care, we're Microsoft, look at our war chest. So they were basically like, we're going to shove into this market, and we don't care how much money we lose. And they lost a ton. Like, they did not, compared to the PS2, they did horribly.
Really?
Horribly.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. So Microsoft showed up not during the N64 PlayStation days, but next generation of consoles, which was Nintendo GameCube, the Sony PS2, and by the way, both of those pretty much the same as before, just better. You know, they were still going after the exact same kind of markets. You still got your JRPGs over on Sony, and you got your Magic over on Nintendo. Although not as much.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And there were a couple JRPGs on GameCube because by then it switched to, I think it was called a GD-ROM. It was a mini disc that held not 700 megabits, but a whole good amount of data.
Yeah, one Luigi's Mansion it held.
Well, because I remember in particular playing Mega Man X Command Mission, which was a JRPG style Mega Man X game. And I believe it came on 2 discs. And there was also Baten Kaitos, which came on three discs. I rented it from GameFly. Got the first 2 discs and not the 3rd disc, so I never could play it.
Never beat it.
So you played the first 2 discs, though?
But no, I started playing it, and I found out it was 3 discs, and I'm like, well, I don't have the 3rd one, it's pointless, so I just sent it back. But, yeah, they had a little bit of recovery at that point, but Namco made Baten Kaitos, I believe. It wasn't Square Enix, who was the holy grail of JRPG makers at the time, but... Sorry for digressing.
I don't even know if they were Square Enix at that point. Like,
they were still Square.
Squaresoft.
Squaresoft, yeah.
Do either of you know any Enix games?
Dragon Quest.
Dragon Quest, okay. That was
right?
their main one.
I had no idea that was them.
Yeah, that was their claim to fame.
Now it makes sense why they would.
This past weekend, we had huge lines in Japan for the new, every time there's a new Dragon Quest, they have lines out the door. They actually declare it a holiday in Japan. Because they know no one's going to go to school. So they're like, all right. So they actually started launching only on days. I believe there was actually like a statute made that they could only launch on days that school was not on.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so Dragon Quest is a huge deal in Japan.
Then things started to happen in this war. Now you were having to choose your friends based on what systems they had because of now we were getting into the world of online play.
Yes.
Yeah, you couldn't play with your Xbox if your friends didn't have one.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
And I remember that I believe that's when games like Call of Duty started going online.
Yes.
Which was a big deal because you had to decide, okay, there's 5 people in my friend group. If 4 of us get PS2, you're getting PS2.
Yeah.
If you want to play with us, or else you can play with strangers. And that's when the wars started kind of getting brutal, I would say, out there. Like, there were definite flags that you had. And if you were GameCube, you were kind of a loser.
Yeah. You didn't play online, that's for sure.
That's right.
A loser like me, or a loser like Chris.
Or a loser like me.
Oh, you also had a GameCube.
Of course.
GameCube was a great system.
I loved Super Mario Sunshine.
I mean, it had a handle, so you could carry it with you.
And I did. I actually used that handle. I would take it everywhere. Like, Steve and I, like, in college, we would all
lug it all around.
Lug it all around. We would take over the lounges at various colleges we would go to.
With big screen TV, and just plug right in and play Smash.
Play Melee, yeah. Just play Melee all day.
Oh, we have to talk about that. So, in these battles, there were always these great games. Super Smash Bros. Melee was the GameCube game. The reason to buy the GameCube was right there.
Yeah.
I remember falling in love with fighting games again with that, and finding community again with people who would want to like sit next to you and play. Because there was a while there, and maybe it's just like growing up and being in different stages of life, but there's a while there where like you're not going to someone's house to play video games anymore. But then when Melee hit, it was like 4 people playing at once. Are you kidding? In a fighting game, in this amazing thing. I just remember that being a big highlight and being kind of gets us to our next point. I think the wars were fun to live through, but now I look back and I was like, why were you being so stupid? You just should have had all of them. There's great games across the entire board.
Or at least, share with others. Because, you certainly don't have the resources as a kid, at least back then.
Mm-mm.
Like, you didn't... We actually would share systems sometimes. Like, I would, borrow my system, you can play this great game. Actually, that was the first Sega system in my house, I remember. My friend Al lent me the Saturn so I could play Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Which was an amazing game.
It was
probably my favorite game of that generation.
It was really good.
No one's played it because they made, 6 copies. And
no one had a Saturn.
Yeah, no one had a Saturn. And they can't remake it because they lost the source code.
Yeah.
So there's no ports or remakes coming, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
But it's a tragedy, but it was amazing.
But yeah, you missed out on it unless you had good friends and you weren't stubborn about it. And I know I really was stubborn about it, because for me it was a big deal. Sega was evil. They were wrong, and I didn't want that in my house. It was a big deal when my sister, she was like, Dreamcast is $50. It was the end of days for Dreamcast. $50 new at a store. She was like, I'm going to get one. I was like, I guess we can do that. I guess. Letting that into the house to live there? It was like letting the enemy into your house.
It's so weird that I know exactly what you're talking about.
To me, that war was over when Nintendo Power, they had a cover with Sonic the Hedgehog on it. And that's one of my most prized possessions that no one else will ever care about, but it's Nintendo Power, Sonic the Hedgehog on the cover. I was like,
it was for Sonic Adventure 2.
I think it was.
Yeah, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on Dreamcast.
That's right.
I mean, on GameCube.
On GameCube.
How dare you?
Yeah, so Battle was the GameCube version.
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure 2 was on Dreamcast.
That was a monstrous moment in time. But then we're giving you a little history lesson, but then Nintendo pulled the biggest left turn they could have possibly done and creates the Wii.
Yes.
And decides not to upgrade graphics. And Sony and Microsoft were like, what? And bam, they were two totally different types of things. And I think for me, that's what killed the war, was now that you could not play the highest end graphics, the latest games, the latest sports games. You could not do it on Nintendo anymore. You had to adopt one of the other guys. And honestly, I think it's remained that way since. Is like Nintendo decided to blaze a path over here and leave the war.
Yeah.
Whereas the other guys are still duking it out and creating great things. But now there's this other magical little thing over here.
Well, they were fighting it and they were losing. The thing was, Nintendo, every successive console after the NES sold less and less and less. The Super Nintendo sold less than the NES. N64 much less. GameCube even less than that. And GameCube was their attempt to go for the power again. Yeah. They're like, we're going to make a really powerful console. We're going to use optical media. It's going to have everything people want. People didn't buy it. They lost that one. By a lot. So then they're like, well, what can we do now? We still think this chipset's really cool. It's really fast. It's a little long in the tooth now, but we have to do something totally different. Enter the Wii. Certainly no one else was doing anything like that. Mm-hmm. And it worked. Then the Wii outsells the NES. And
everyone and the grandmother literally bought a Wii.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because it was something that you could share with the entire family, or something that's readily accessible, more so than the button combinations or the button configurations we were used to and had grown muscle memory for, most gamers by that
Dual
point.
analog is really hard if you don't play games.
Yeah. And just the fact of you have to sometimes move the analog stick and press a button at the same time is a lot for people to wrap their head around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so then the Wii comes out with the Wiimote and the Waggle controls and motion controls, and it was a revelation for just about everyone. Even people who could not traditionally play games, like people who had motor control issues or things like that, or some people who were disabled could use the Wii because you could still point.
Yeah.
And you could still play the game if you could point. And it was...
So yeah, it was a market...
Open horizons for
There's a total divergence, because it's these totally new types of games coming out. There's still the classic, power games coming out for your joysticks and your buttons, but that's on the PS3, that's on the Xbox 360. And kind of at that point, those two became the competitors, and Nintendo was all on its own little left field.
Yeah.
Nintendo shot the moon, and they were content to live on the moon by themselves, while Sony and Microsoft fought over the remains of the Earth.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting thing, because I didn't know a gamer who did not have the Wii. It was there. It was sitting there. Maybe it was your sisters. Maybe it was your little brothers. But it was in your house.
Yeah.
And that was new.
Yeah.
Because we had left the world of one console to rule them all. And now a lot of people had at least two. I think it's still like that. And I think with the Wii U, a lot of that dropped off.
Yeah.
But now that we're back to Switch, I'm seeing that again, that the Switch is sitting on top of either an Xbox One or a PS4.
Yep. Yeah, certainly. If you want to play like the third-party games, you go with one of the others. But the thing is, the distinctions between those two, Microsoft and Sony, I think it's gone less and less. And this generation is the least of all. Like, there are very few games that you can't get on both. Yeah. And there are very few games that, even if they are on both, you can't tell the difference.
Exactly.
What's a game right now that only exists on one of the big three?
Well, besides anything that's like by a first-party developer, like things by Rare or things by things by Rare and stuff like that.
I mean, Halo, obviously, the new Halo.
You're only going to find on Xbox.
And you talk about things like Uncharted for Sony.
Okay.
Yeah. Because those are not first-party, they're like kind of second-party developers because they work very closely with those console developers. Naughty Dog with Sony and Bungie, and Rare with
Microsoft, but Microsoft also has Bungie.
Rare's making Halo now.
Halo, well, God, I forget what company.
Because it's not Bungie.
It's not Bungie anymore.
Sorry. I grew up during the original Xbox console wars, so Halo is Bungie, but yeah.
Which is also funny. Bungie was originally a Mac developer. Yeah. Fascinating stuff because they used to make it was Marathon was a Mac game. It was a first-person shooter. That was the predecessor to Halo, and then Microsoft bought the Mac developer.
Huh.
Yeah.
I remember Marathon.
Yeah.
Very weird.
But yeah, so they've got that, but there's not a lot, really. Like, if there's God of War, Uncharted, that's about it. Even Crash Bandicoot, like, that was the big mascot for Sony. The new re-release is cross-platform. It's on everything.
We live in an amazing time. I mean, really, I think the wars are over. Sony would disagree, Microsoft would disagree.
Well, I think they're over if you are above... If you're 20 or older.
Yeah.
I think it's still different. Like, if you're a kid...
Yeah, you still are limited to one, yeah.
Like, if you go into message boards, they're still fighting.
Good.
Keep fighting. Go to IGN.com. It's still there. It's still got millions of viewers. There's still people on the forums fighting about the consoles. Amazingly enough.
That makes me
very
happy.
We just grew out of it for a lot of it. Yeah.
What's something we grew out of it? Terry's longing for those days. Snuggled out in the schoolyard.
Yeah, I still wake up with a cold sweat in the middle of the night being like, Sony! You took from me what I loved, because there's no way Square wanted to leave. There's no way Capcom wanted to leave.
They were kidnapped in the dark of the night.
They never came back.
No, it was funny about Sony too, though. Like, I feel like the PlayStation 3 was their hubris. Like, there's these amazing rises and falls. So, like, Sega had the hubris with the Genesis, and then they fell, like, markedly in the N60, the 32-bits era. Sony, the PlayStation 1 was big. The PlayStation 2 was massive.
Even bigger.
Huge.
Tremendous. One of the, perhaps, I think it's the best-selling console of all time, bar none.
Yeah, it had Kingdom Hearts on it.
And then PlayStation 3 came out. They're like, we are on this high horse. Nothing can defeat us. It costs $600.
Yeah.
We don't care. It's coming out. And then they lost that generation. And, like, up until the last 2 years, a lot.
Yeah.
Like, by the end, like, they gained parity with the 360. But at first, it was like, nobody had a PS3. It was expensive. The ports were worse. It was just bad. So, like, they fell and ate crow for that whole generation.
It's funny to look at that it kind of went Nintendo, Sega, Super Nintendo, PlayStation. Well, PlayStation and N64 were still kind of in there. I guess it's more interesting that it was like N64 and PlayStation were neck and neck. PS2 clearly won.
PS2 was huge.
And then the 360 won.
Yeah.
So they're all winning.
Technically
at
the Wii.
different times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess the Wii won.
Technically the Wii, but the 360 was...
But they won a different way.
Yeah.
Sony was fighting a battle on two fronts and lost both.
Yeah. At the end of that generation, they pulled it around, and a lot of people liked it a lot better by the end of that. But then people were still thinking about the next systems.
Yeah.
Now the PS4 is far and away killing everything.
It is.
Yeah. It is.
PS4 is undisputed winner?
Undisputed winner right now. By a pretty wide margin.
How's the Switch doing?
Switch is doing great.
It's good,
It's early days. It just came out 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. So, but it is selling, if you align the launches, it's selling better than the PS4.
Yeah, and I think it's like
right there.
They just announced 6 million shipped or something. And most of the Switches that are shipped to stores are bought from stores immediately because people still have trouble finding them. So I'm pretty sure if they shipped 6 million, they sold 6 million.
There are articles now in Japan. In Japan, it's really hard to get one. People are lining up for hours. And what they do there is they have a lottery system where they give everyone a lottery ticket. It's like numbered from 1 to 500. Mm-hmm. And then they call out the number of who gets to buy that system. So they'll have a giant ball. They'll be like, oh, number 67, you get to buy one.
Wow.
And this is happening every time they get a disbursement. So every week they have these giant lines. Apparently it's horrible.
So it's like trying to get Hamilton tickets.
Yes.
Day of, yeah.
Exactly.
You know, they're doing a lot of things right. Nintendo's doing a lot of things right, including releasing these retro things. That NES Mini
consoles.
and the SNES, like, what? Whose idea was that? Do you think Sony will ever do that?
Oh, that would be interesting. I don't know if Sony will do it quite like that because basically they port everything. Like, you can play all the PlayStation 1 classics. On the PS3 you could. The PS4 doesn't let you do that.
Now what they're doing is they're doing the PS Now, which is a streaming service from when they bought OnLive.
Gaikai? Or
Gaikai. One of the streaming services a couple years ago. So they're doing that now. They're expanding the library finally, but it's still paltry compared to the massive library of the PS2 and PS3. Like, there's so many PS2 games, because I never owned a PS2, I never got to play.
Me neither.
And I really, really want to play them, and I can't wait till... If PS4 had them on streaming, I would pay their $5 or $7 a month, whatever. But they either can't or won't port it, and they can't or won't remaster it, so I'm kind of like...
So
Forget you, Sony.
The last thing I want to talk about is, what was during the wars, what was the console that you felt the strongest about, that you were on their side? And also, what was the console that had the game that almost got you, or did get you, to jump? And if you need a minute, I'll go first. So, my all-time favorite system, ride or die, is the Super Nintendo. You know, I will always support that system. It just had everything I was looking for at the time. And you know why? It's because it's the only place to really, for a lot of these people, to make a lot of these games. The only other dog in the fight was Sega, but it was just not, it didn't have the same products. It didn't have the same library on there. It didn't have JRPGs. It didn't have sports games. It didn't have, I mean, it had some sports games, but they were markedly different, you know? And they didn't have the big gun, which is the Nintendo-produced content. But it was just like the magic of all of these titans of gaming right now. We're making a lot of their first classic games on that Super Nintendo. So you got a taste of everything, you know, from Capcom to, help me out, Capcom, Acclaim.
One of Blizzard's first games was on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, the Lost Vikings?
Yeah.
Lost Vikings, yeah, Blizzard, like all these guys were getting their feet wet on that console, and there was just so much magic going on at that time. And you had everything. And Sega didn't have everything. I don't think Sega had a lot of the same types of titles on their system. But, so I was Nintendo for a long time, but the one game that really got me was PS2, to the point where I was borrowing PS2s and owned a copy of the game. I had just Nintendo consoles, one PS2 game, Kingdom Hearts 2. And I would find people's PS2s when they weren't using them. The girls that lived downstairs in college, I would take theirs for a little while and just burn through it. And I would do that multiple times. That game was magic. That was my first interaction with a Square game again. Another Square crossover game where I felt that same magic that I did back on Super Mario RPG. So, of the war, that was the one that finally got me to say, quit the war, play the games that are good. What about you guys?
Yeah, so like when I was younger, I started with the, like I said, the Nintendo 5400. I got a Nintendo. Atari. Yeah, thank you. I got the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then my brother bought a Genesis with money he made himself. And then he moved out shortly after he got it, so he took the Genesis with him. I was heartbroken, but I was also jonesing for that fix because I had played Sonic the Hedgehog. And then he took Sonic the Hedgehog from me. And I was like, well, I need to find this. So I literally I make friends with people on my block only so I can play their Genesis. Not only, we became better friends later, but it started with, oh, you have a Genesis. Come to my house and we can play my copy of Sonic I have here that I don't have a system to play it on. And I would go to Funko Lane and buy Genesis games. So when
for someone else's system.
For myself. So they would come
console.
over. Now, mind you, these were used games, so they were like 99 cents sometimes. And I'm like, I want to really play Sonic Spinball. So when my friends finish playing whatever games he's playing, he's going to let me borrow his Genesis. I play Sonic Spinball for 2 weeks at a time, and it was heaven. Also played a lot of Super Nintendo. Notably, Chris loaned me his Super Nintendo with Chrono Trigger. At one point, it was a little later after it came out. It was like 99 or something like that. But
You gifted him?
well,
Well,
not
it was a
gifted.
borrow.
No, I
loans.
mean borrow, but you just said this is an amazing game and handed one of
Yes.
the greatest games of all time and said you need to play this. It's
Yes.
the most beautiful friendship story I've ever heard.
Yeah, we ended up doing that a lot because at this point we were like going to the arcades together, and like I mean we talk about games all the time. We traded gaming magazines. I got Nintendo Power,
I got Electronic Gaming Monthly.
and we trade them like, oh, I'm done reading this, and we'd read each other's all the time. So it was a lot of we got to experience a lot more because of trading.
Yeah, and so because of that that history I had with consoles, I was a mercenary in the console wars
Yeah.
of the 90s. So I was very much a soldier of opportunity. Whatever system I had at the time is the system I backed. Now, I didn't have any Super Nintendo games without a system, but I read about them in his Nintendo Power all the time. And I fantasized about playing these games, starting with Super Mario World. So then the first time I got to sit down and play through Super Mario World, it was like an old friend I was revisiting. And it was because of my older friends, my oldest friends' generosity, I was able to experience it. But then then a game that wanted me to switch to the other side, I was always kind of console agnostic because of not really owning one since the NES until Panzer Dragoon Saga came out on Sega Saturn. Which is I wanted and needed a Saturn, which you could not find because they sold horribly and most of them were sent back to Sega.
Did you ever own a Saturn?
No.
Okay.
Our friend Algernon
Yeah.
owned a Saturn, and he loaned it to me to play Panzer Dragoon.
You have the best friends.
Yeah.
I'm honored and grateful. But yeah, so after that, I was just like, I love Sega. I've never had a Sega console, and Nintendo only has an N64, which was very expensive at the time, if I recall. Mm-hmm. So then when the Dreamcast came out on 9/9/99, I think it was.
September 9th, 1999.
And it was relatively inexpensive.
For the
It was
low
like
price of
$199. Yeah, it was like $199 or something.
$199, I
It
think
was
it was
really
much.
cheap for a console at the time too.
Especially, I consider still the first good 3D console.
Yeah. And so when that came out, I just started college. So I got myself a credit card. Bad move number one. Said, I'm going to buy this Dreamcast and then get a job and pay off the cost of the Dreamcast. Of course, never happened. I spent too much time playing Dreamcast. But it was amazing.
The credit card bill still exists today.
It's been paid off for a while now, thankfully. But it was. I put myself into hock for that system. That's how much I wanted a Dreamcast.
That's intense.
And just playing Power Stone
Oh my
all
God.
night with my college roommates. It was amazing.
Sounds
We played a lot of Dreamcast back then.
So then whenever we came home and we had like summer break, we would spend a lot of time playing Dreamcast games together because now I could play this amazing system that I owned for once with my friends who would share their system with me, and it was a nice, ending to that story. I thought.
I would say you did it right. I would say that if I had to do it all again, I'd want to be. I'd want to go back into the war. I think you did the most intelligent thing. But I'm glad that I have my passionate fire and anger and rage still in me against Sony particularly. Sony will always be my greatest enemy for stealing my games away from me. Stealing my second-party developers.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
So for me, it was definitely a big Sega is just brash and awful. It softened on me because we used to go to the arcades, and Sega made great arcade games. Like, that's a totally different conversation, but they made amazing games that we played a lot. And then I was like, they make great arcade games. I'm gonna give them a shot. And once they stopped making systems, it was definitely like, well,
they lost now, yeah.
So the Dreamcast,
Once they died, they would be friends with them.
Sega has been sufficiently subjugated.
Exactly. So now I can enjoy these games without any bearing on my conscience, because it was a conscience sort of thing. But yeah, but I love the Dreamcast. So at that point, I don't even consider that kind of letting it in. I was just like, that wasn't a fight. But then I had the Gamecube. GameCube was sort of beleaguered. I thought it was an amazing system. I used to play, we talked about Melee already, but Super Monkey Ball. Monkey Ball and its modes we played a ton of. It had Wind Waker, which was my favorite Zelda at the time.
Oh my God.
There were a lot of great games on that system. No one bought it. Everyone had the PS2. He's like, everyone's playing PS2. I'm like, I don't care. And towards the end of that generation, they released a little game called Guitar Hero.
Yes.
And I actually went and met the developers of Guitar Hero, because at the time I was in college. I was just out of college, actually. went to Boston and got to meet the developers, but Guitar Hero sucked me in, and I saw people playing it, and I was like, I need this game. Oh my god.
I think I still remember the first time, I think you might have had the apartment on Green Lane, and I was just like, I came over to visit Chris, and I'm just like, is that a PS2? Okay, first I saw him with the plastic guitar, and he's playing, and I'm like, oh, Guitar Hero, that game. That's not on Gamecube. I look down, I see the black box of the PS2, and I'm like, oh my god, Chris, are you okay?
Yeah, so it was late. This was late in the cycle. So I got a PlayStation 2 Slim just to play Guitar Hero and Guitar Hero 2, particularly when that came out. I love those games, and we played them as a party. Like, it was great. Yeah. So that's it wasn't on anything else. It came out on Xbox eventually. Then it came out, like, Guitar Hero 3 came out on the Wii later. Then it's on everything. Yeah. But this was like, I needed it then. Like, that was the height of the craze. So I really wanted to, like, play it and get better. I was like, I can't do the 5-star songs. I need to get that good. Yes. I need it at home. So I got it. And to this day, I still own only 3 PlayStation 2 games. Had the whole system, but I got...
Tell me it's Guitar Hero 2, and Guitar Hero 3.
No, it's Guitar Hero 2.
Okay.
I think, then Katamari Damacy. Have you played that? Oh my god, dude, we got it.
What is it?
So Katamari is a game about rolling a tiny ball and picking up objects to grow to a larger ball to pick up even bigger objects. It's a very strange, very Japanese game. Basically, you start like from the size of like a mouse, and you're rolling and rolling and rolling, and eventually you're the size of a continent. It's really fun, really wacky game. You would love it.
I'm down.
I can't believe you haven't heard of that.
Never
Isn't
heard
that
of it.
blow your mind that you never heard of Katamari? Okay. But that game...
I'm going to YouTube it.
And somehow, I think for free, I got Metal Gear Solid 3, which I'm still got to beat. Still playing through that one. But that's everything I got. That's the PS2. And the PS2, I have this like massive 1,000-game library.
He's like, I've got 3. 2, one of which I've played extensively. One I've played a lot. One I haven't finished.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll get there one day.
Well, folks, that's it for the console wars with Tubby Talk. This was a great one. I think the most important thing about all of this is that we all have these kind of stories. We all have this love and this passion, sometimes hate, in our heart about video games. And it's important to share that with your friends and make new friends over discussing things like this. So please come to Tubby Robot and talk to these fine gentlemen about video games. They'd love to do it. Talk to me anytime about video games. Light up our comments. We want to hear about the life-changing moments for you during the wars. Were you a mercenary like Steve, or were you more of fanboys like like us? But remember that at the end of the day, it's all fun. This is all gaming. This is all good stuff. It's okay if people like different things, unless you're Sony. We hope you guys had a great time watching. I know we had a great time making this. This has been Tubby Talk. As always, I'm Terry.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
And we will see you next time on the next episode where we talk about another topic.
Ooh.
See you soon.